In a lush village called Nkwere, nestled in the eastern part of Nigeria, where the hills kissed the skies and rivers whispered ancient secrets, lived Nnenna. She was a widow in her mid-30s, strikingly beautiful, with skin the color of roasted cashews and eyes that held the depth of countless stories. Nnenna's life had been riddled with challenges. Her husband, Obiora, had died of a fever when she was 6 months pregnant with their first child. Left to fend for herself, she poured her heart and soul into raising their son, Ikenna. He was her light in the darkness, the only thread connecting her to a life once filled with love and laughter. But Ikenna's birth had been shrouded in whispers. Born on an evening when the moon hung low and red in the sky, the village seer, Okonkwo, had declared him an Ogbanje. These spirit children, as the elders believed, were born to torment their families, bringing misfortune and then dying young, only to be reborn again and repeat the cycle. Nkwere was a place where tradition ruled every aspect of life. The people believed in the power of ancestors, the wrath of gods, and the danger of spirits. Misfortune was rarely seen as coincidence. It was always a sign, a warning, or a punishment. When Nnenna's goats started dying, her cassava plants withered, and a neighbor fell mysteriously ill, the blame fell squarely on Ikenna. The whispers began as ripples and soon became a wave. The boy must be an Ogbanje, the women in the marketplace said. He is the source of all our troubles. Okonkwo, the village elder and spiritual custodian, foiled the fear. With his long, flowing robes and a staff adorned with charms, he commanded respect and fear. The spirits demand sacrifice, he announced one day at the village square. If the boy is not returned to them, our suffering will only worsen. Nnenna, though heartbroken, tried to reason with herself and the villagers. Ikenna is just a boy, she argued. He laughs, plays, and cries like any other child. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Everywhere she turned, she was met with judgmental eyes and muttered curses. Children were forbidden to play with Ikenna, and mothers pulled their toddlers close when she passed by. She began to feel like a pariah in her own home. The turning point came when the village's communal yam barn caught fire one night. Though no one could explain how it happened, the blame was immediate and unanimous. The boy is cursed, someone shouted, and the mob echoed the sentiment. That night, Okonkwo visited Nnenna's hut. Sitting across from her in the dim glow of a lantern, he spoke with an air of finality. You must bury the child alive, Nnenna. It is the only way to appease the gods. He handed her a clay pot filled with powder. This will make it quick and painless. Nnenna clutched the pot, her hands trembling. How can I bury my only child? He is all I have left of Obiora. But Okonkwo's face remained stone-like. If you do not, the entire village will suffer. Their blood will be on your hands. For days, Nnenna wrestled with her conscience. She avoided Ikenna's innocent questions and playful advances, unable to look him in the eyes. Every laugh he gave was a dagger to her heart, every hug a weight she couldn't bear. She turned to Adaku, her late husband's sister, a fierce woman who had been educated in the city before returning to the village. Nnenna, these people are blinded by fear and ignorance, Adaku said firmly. Leave this village. We can go to the city. There, no one will care about spirits or curses. But Nnenna hesitated. This land is all I know. I can't leave my ancestors, Obiora's grave, and the little life we've built here. Ikenna deserves a home. Adaku shook her head in frustration. A home where people want to kill him? Think, Nnenna. There's no future for him here. On the night of the full moon, Nnenna's resolve broke. Convinced that sacrificing Ikenna was the only way to save him from the hatred of the villagers, she decided to carry out the act. She dressed him in his finest clothes and led him into the forest, carrying a small lantern and the clay pot. Ikenna, my son, she said softly, do you know the story of the moon and the stars? No, Mama, tell me, he said eagerly, his small hand clutching hers. She smiled faintly, her voice trembling. The stars are the children of the moon. When the moon is lonely, it sends the stars to shine and keep it company. I want to be a star, Ikenna said, his face glowing with innocence. As they reached the sacred clearing, Nnenna set the lantern down and began to dig. The soil was damp and cool, and each handful felt like a piece of her soul was being torn away. Ikenna watched curiously. Mama, are we planting something? Nnenna's tears fell freely. Yes, my son, she whispered, her voice choked. We are planting love. When the hole was deep enough, she placed him inside, his small body fitting snugly. Close your eyes, she said, her voice breaking. He obeyed, giggling softly. As she reached for the clay pot, a sudden rustling in the bushes startled her. Out stepped Adaku, her face furious, followed by several villagers holding lanterns. Stop this madness, Nnenna, Adaku screamed. She rushed forward, pulling Ikenna out of the hole. This child is no Ogbanje. He is flesh and blood, and you will not take his life. The villagers murmured among themselves, unsure of what to do. Okonkwo, who had followed the crowd, stepped forward. She defies the gods, he said, his voice booming. This boy will bring ruin to us all. Adaku turned to the crowd, her eyes blazing. And what ruin have the gods spared us so far? Our young man burned, our crops failed, and our children fell ill, all while this boy was alive. Perhaps it is not the boy but your blind faith in men like Okonkwo that causes us. Her words struck a chord. The villagers, long accustomed to following orders, began to question their beliefs. In the weeks that followed Adaku's bold confrontation, the village of Nkewe began to change. For years, fear and superstition had guided their lives, but Adaku's words lingered like a spark in dry grass. Many villagers started questioning Okonkwo's authority. Nnenna, still shaken by how close she had come to burying her own son, found herself overwhelmed with both guilt and relief. Adaku stayed with her, refusing to leave her side. You have been through fire and survived, Adaku told her one evening. But this is not the end. You owe it to Ikenna, and to yourself, to rebuild. Nnenna began to heal. She would often sit with Ikenna by the river, watching him splash around, his laughter echoing through the forest. Every time she looked into his bright, innocent eyes, she vowed never to let fear cloud her judgment. Okonkwo, meanwhile, found his influence crumbling. Villagers no longer visited him with their problems or sought his divinations. His once busy shrine stood empty, the charms and offerings left to gather dust. A turning point came when Nduka, a respected elder who had supported Okonkwo, fell gravely ill. Desperate, Nduka's family initially sought the seer's help, but his chants and potions did nothing. In their despair, they turned to Ikenna, who had been learning herbal medicine from Adaku. Though only a boy, Ikenna followed Adaku's instructions to prepare a healing mixture from roots and leaves. Within days, Nduka's fever broke. The news spread like wildfire, and for the first time, the villagers began to see Ikenna not as a curse, but as a blessing. Perhaps the boy is not an Ogbanje after all, one elder murmured. Perhaps we have been wrong all along. Okonkwo, desperate to regain control, accused Adaku and Ikenna of witchcraft. But his words carried no weight anymore. The villagers, emboldened by Adaku's defiance, began to see him as a fraud who had exploited their fears. One by one, they stopped attending his gatherings. Even his most loyal followers turned their backs on him. Alone and disgraced, Okonkwo left the village, his staff of charms abandoned by the shrine. With Okonkwo gone, Nkewe began to embrace change. Adaku started a small school under a large Iroko tree, teaching the children to read, write, and think critically. Education is the light that will drive away our shadows, she often said. Nnena became a key figure in the village, using her voice to advocate for compassion and understanding. She worked with Adaku to organize gatherings where villagers could share their concerns without fear of judgment. Together, they encouraged people to blend their traditions with new ideas, creating a balance between honoring their ancestors and embracing progress. Ikena, once shunned, became a symbol of hope. As he grew older, his talent for healing flourished. Villagers came to him not just for physical ailments, but for advice and guidance. He would often remind them, the true cause is fear. When we confront it, we break its power. Nkewe thrived in ways it never had before. The yam harvests grew bountiful as villagers worked together rather than living in division. The children, once bound by superstition, now ran freely, their laughter filling the air. Even the elders, though slow to change, began to adopt new ways of thinking. They still told stories of the gods and spirits, but now these tales served as metaphors for wisdom rather than tools for control. Nnena, though forever marked by the scars of her ordeal, found peace. She often watched Ikena with pride as he worked through the village, his head held high. "You are my star," she would whisper to him at night. "You shine even in the darkest times." And so, Nkewe became a village reborn, a place where the past was honored, but the future was embraced with open arms.